While it may still take months for a vaccine to be developed, there is hope from two new studies suggesting antibodies could provide immunity from coronavirus. For more on this, let's bring in internal medicine specialist, Dr. Neeta Ogden. Thanks for joining us, Dr. Ogden. So these studies look at how certain primates, monkeys with coronavirus, reacted to being reinfected. So what does this mean for human beings, and how long might it last?
It's a great study because it actually allows us to be somewhat optimistic about two things, our own natural immunity against the virus and the vaccine-induced immunity. Of course, we have to proceed with caution with humans. We can't extrapolate very clearly, although there is shared DNA between rhesus monkeys and humans. But the main takeaway points here were that, number one arm of their study looked at monkeys who were perfectly healthy and then challenged with the virus. And they found that they produced neutralizing antibodies to the virus. And when they were completely recovered, they were challenged with the virus again. And they had a huge protective surge, again, of those neutralizing antibodies, and were very quickly able to eliminate the virus and not show signs of infection. The second arm of the study actually explored their DNA vaccine that they're developing and different variants of it. They injected the monkeys with the vaccine, and again, 3 weeks later, challenged them with the virus. And in 8 of those monkeys, in one of these variants of the vaccine, there was absolutely no viral replication detected. So again, while we have to, proceed with caution in making predictions about humans, this can be very hopeful about both vaccine effectiveness and our own body's ability to create neutralizing antibodies that can effectively eliminate the virus.
Well, I'll take any good news about combating the virus in the future. But as for avoiding the virus right now, the CDC has issued some sort of new information about being contaminated by touching surfaces where the virus is still alive. What do we know about that? Because, that's one of the things that many people are concerned about, that they may not even know when they go to the grocery store if the person who had been perusing the cereal aisle 30 seconds before them coughed on a box and they touched it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the takeaway from the CDC guidelines is that this is not the main way that you're going to get the virus, through touch surfaces. They're reminding us, though, that the COVID-19 is still a new virus. We're still learning about how it spreads. So the main thing is that this isn't necessarily like the biggest way that you're going to get it. And that's also true of animals that they've mentioned. We're unlikely to get it from dogs and cats. However, this does not mean that we should stop washing our hands and disinfecting. And the main things that we need to continue to do are social distancing, wearing the mask, washing our hands, and disinfecting. In fact, disinfecting is a huge part of many of the states' guidelines in terms of reopening. So there is something about surfaces. I think what they're trying to say is just touching a surface is not going to necessarily create, a big outbreak. One major point that's continues to come through here, though, is if you're touching surfaces or people or anything, you're out in the world, and then you touch your face, and now you potentially breathe in, something that you may have touched that has virus. That's a different story, which is why washing your hands and even wearing a mask in certain situations at this time, actually all the time when you're outside, is really important.
Yeah, doctor, I know that, and your scientific evidence and the CDC guidelines are really important context for our viewers here. But I have had a lot of people who reached out to me on social media when we've talked to doctors like yourself about this, and they say, because of what you just said there at the very end, which is, yes, you're probably not going to get it from a surface. You're probably not going to get it from a delivery container or groceries that you've had delivered. But if you then touch some of those things and then you touch your face while you're in the comfort of your own home, in other words, while you're maintaining social distancing and not going out, and then you somehow contract it because of the dearth of information that exists currently about this virus, that would be really terrible for some people. So there are some people who still feel comfortable, and I'm pointing at myself here, with disinfecting those things that come into the home, just because you don't want to have to worry about washing your hands every 5 minutes when you're just in the safety of your own home.
I agree with you. I doubt I'm going to change my practices right now either, because you also have to look at the community that you live in. I live in northern New Jersey, where there are still very high numbers and coronavirus is around and about. And so I will take that precaution when I touch the groceries and the deliveries and wash my hands and wipe them down. So I think that's another point of the CDC guidelines, is to look at the community that you live in. Is there significant spread? Are the numbers high? That's also dictating reopening guidelines in many of the states. I agree with you. I think that we also are hearing about cases of individuals who barely left their home and tested positive or antibody positive. So there is that little piece that, could it have come from something that you touched, especially if you live in an area where continues to be high levels of coronavirus.
I want to ask you about some new information coming out of Columbia University. An estimate that basically indicated that if we had started our coronavirus lockdowns 2 weeks earlier than we originally did in March, 36,000 fewer people would have died. That's huge. Can you sort of explain how 2 weeks would have made such a big difference?
Yeah, I found that, news analysis through Columbia really interesting too, that at 1 week, if we had started 1 week earlier, there would be such a significant number of people who hadn't died. And even 2 weeks, you see it drop to 54,000 people wouldn't have died. I think it speaks to how quickly the virus really did spread in the beginning, when we had didn't really have that message out there to start social distancing. And so more and more evidence is emerging that large amounts of people were infected and simply didn't know it. It wasn't on their minds. And the whole idea of social distancing really didn't go into effect until mid-March. And so we know that these models show us that one person with an infection very, very quickly spreads to many. And that's exactly what was happening. And even a day, 7 days a week, makes such a significant difference in terms of how many people are infected, and then certainly how many people die, because that's the nature of the virus, in the sense that it moves quickly and going undetected, affecting a large amount of people, and depending on how much you're exposed to, can quickly lead to severe infection and death.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Ogden, for correcting me. It was 1 week's difference, not 2 weeks. Really appreciate your insight. Thank you so much.
Thank you.